A very good evening and warm welcome to honorable guests, esteemed speakers, scientists, faculties across different continents, students, and my dear friends. A very warm welcome to one and all. And today we are gathered here to discuss, talk, and celebrate International Women's Day 2021. I, Dr. Shalini Arya, faculty and member of Global Young Academy and INIAS, here on behalf of Institute of Chemical Technology, Global Young Academy, and Indian National Science Academy's Women in Science panel. I welcome all of you. So, dear all, the entire world knows why International Women's Day is celebrated on today's day. And in upcoming talk, Professor Adi Warekar sir will give significance and details about that. So, therefore, we have our today's first speaker, Professor Aniruddha Pandit. And Professor Aniruddha Pandit is Vice Chancellor of Institute of Chemical Technology. I'm very thankful and feel proud that I'm associated with institute where women are motivated, encouraged to take leadership role and many other roles. So thank you so much, sir, for always motivating, encouraging all of us. So, sir has been instrumental and part of many organizations. He's a FNA, fellow of TWAS, fellow of all the, in fact, academies, science academies. He has done his BTech from Indian Institute of Technology, BHU, and later on PhD from very own institute, that is Institute of Chemical Technology in 1984. Sir has published so many research paper and he has so many awards and other accolades on his credit. So without taking much time, I now request Professor Pandit to give a welcome address to all the audiences. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shalini. Am I audible?
Yes, very much, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I'm very happy to be here amongst all these beautiful ladies who have taken the lead. It is extremely encouraging. And whenever I see this Women's Day or any affirmative action which is usually required, the day when this affirmative action is not required, I would say, is the true liberation day for all the women. I did my engineering from 75 to 80. In the entire institute at that time, there were few girls you could be counted on fingers. But you see today now, the equality and the affirmative action, 30% reservation for the girl student has made a world of difference. That on every front, be it scientific endeavors, be it research, be it engineering or technology, there is still some preferences for some branches, but overall, if you see that women are no less in terms of their competence, in terms of their achievement. But what I'm trying to say here is not their achievements. What they are trying to say is we must be in a position to understand the level of equality and celebrate the kind of depth and breadth with which women have been able to contribute to the field of science, to the field of psychology, to the field of society, the field of societal development. Now, certain slogans which you see in the back of auto rickshaws, Mulgi Shikli Pragati Zali, which clearly indicates that women is the one who's going to drive the progress of the nation. Because if women is learned and she understands and because she is the one who's going to influence the whole working of a family, the wards, their thinking, their upbringing, and in turn, overall society. The women's contribution, in my opinion, will take another generation for us to be able to realize it. And this particular day on 8th of March, what we celebrate is essentially recognizing their contribution and saying thank you very much, ladies, that you have been able to give us what we were looking out for in terms of the missing puzzle, a missing piece from a jigsaw puzzle in terms of wholeness of the society which was required. Because all the fields and all the workings, whether it is scientific field or engineering field or sports field, you will find that the affirmative action which was taken earlier has paid rich dividends, and you see women working side by side men, and that is why the overall developmental work of India has happened, and it will continue to happen. Now, if somebody takes up and looks at the contribution in terms of the societal development in terms of GDP, and you make a list of the CEOs who are women in the Indian financial sector, you'll be surprised to find out that women have surpassed men as far as achievements in terms of finance sector is concerned. And that comes naturally to them. It is instinctive for them. Now, this is that motherly instinct, the instinct to encompass everybody, to take everybody along with them, is the property of women, or is the nature of women which we are trying to celebrate on this Women's Day. So I see a very nice group of talks which have been arranged by Shalini. Shalini always is one of our dynamic women who has been responsible to bring these areas, research and technology areas upfront in the forefront through universities' contribution and active support from all the women scientists which work in ICT. So I'm very happy that you have been given, I have been given this opportunity to address you all, and I wish these small little seminar lasting for about 2.5 hours to be very productive, and I'm sure you will have some takeaway lessons which will allow you to celebrate Women's Day in its true spirit in terms of the letters, and we take this opportunity that we will continue to give support for these kind of celebrations to say thank you, women folk and women scientists, for also contributing and allowing us to say thank you to you. Thank you very much. I'll hand over the mic to Shalini. Thank you. Shalini?
Since Shalini is not there, may I take over? Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, Ravi. I was about to ask you if Shalini is not there, please
Yeah, sir, I'm there. There was some.
Okay, Shalini.
continue. There was something. Yeah. Thank you, Shalini. I just said that hand over. I think I have
Yes,
given the
thank you so.
introduction, and please continue with your deliberation.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for your very inspiring and nice talk. And we move ahead with our next talk. And we have today with us Professor Adi Warekar, who is the head of Department of Fibers and Textile Processing Technology. He is also Dean of Human Resource Department at Institute of Chemical Technology. And Professor Adi Warekar is he has more than 25 years of experience, and he has been a very motivating faculty who is always encouraging to conduct various activity which empowers women particularly, and there are many others. So over to you, sir. I request Professor Adi Warekar to give the background and significance of today's celebration.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you for this honor. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. A.B. Pandit, Professor Dr. Shobna Sharma, Chair, INSA Women in Science Panel, India, Professor Dr. Anudita Bhadra, Co-Chair GYA, that is Global Young Academy, Dr. Almas Tej Ajwin, Executive Committee Global Young Academy, Dr. Nafisa Ismail, University of Ottawa, Canada, and our very own Dr. Shalini Arya, and everyone present. I would like to welcome and thank everyone in today's International Women's Day ceremony organized by ICT Mumbai in association with Indian National Science Academy and Global Young Academy. A famous quote by Hillary Clinton says, human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights, which align with the priority theme of 65th session of Commission on the Status of Women. And further it says women's full and effective participation and decision making in public life, as well as the elimination of violence for achieving gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls is must. And we are a step in that direction. International Women's Day is celebrated on March 8 as a global day for celebrating the social, cultural, economic, and political achievements of women. Worldwide celebrations have been witnessed as groups come together to celebrate women's equality and gender parity. This day has been observed since the early 20th century, a time of great expansion and turbulence in the industrialized world that saw booming population growth and rise of radical ideologies. Women's Day was duly initiated in the 20th century, but in the mid 19th century, on March 8, 1857, when some women workers in New York, USA demanded better work situation and better pay. The theme of International Women's Day for 2021 is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in COVID-19 World. And every one of us know what is the contribution, great contribution. Without them, I don't think we could have come back to this normal, because it started their contribution from every house. They really kept every house going. This theme celebrates the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the world in shaping an equal future and recovery from the pandemic. Today, they say at the front lines of COVID-19 crisis as healthcare workers, innovators, organizers, and some of the most exemplary and effective national leaders in combating pandemic. The crisis has highlighted both the centrality of their contributions and the disproportionate burden that women carry. Their extraordinary skills, knowledge, and network have emerged as effective response and recovery efforts. The society has slowly but definitely started accepting the equal participation of women in the salient development of humankind. Uh, I have personally my certain views which I would like to put forward very shortly. Probably I'm not that fluent in speaking, so don't misunderstand me. Okay, but I consider that every woman is born leader. And when we talk about the women's equality, I think it is not with respect to caliber or potential of the woman concerned, because I feel they are far, far, far superior. They are far superior than any of the men. See, if we look at the words which we use, Jagan Mata, Jagan Janni, Bharat Mata, Matrubhumi, this whole world, who belongs to whom? It belongs to woman, right? So I think when we talk about the equality, we are just talking about equality in terms of visibility or honoring. And I think now we are progressing towards this direction. So with this brief introduction, let me end this wishing all of you, all women, very happy Women's Day. So thank you, Shalini, for this opportunity. Over
Thank
to
you
you, Shalini.
so much, sir, for such a wonderful and motivating talk. And few words itself, means a lot. So you have rightly said that women plays many roles, and these needs to be appreciated and acknowledged. And you have in a short few words you have encouraged and motivated to us. So we know that in the last decades or so, particularly because of all of us are STEM, in STEM, that is science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, or overall also women have increasingly taken up high offices and even jobs that were once only executed by men. But now the scenario that we see is so different. So this change has brought, because of the leaders and men, some of the supportive men who have always encouraged, and also the women who have always fought for such changes. So thank you so much to all the men and women who have supported and brought us to this level. And I'm sure henceforth also the graph will be for women's progress, it will be exponential. So with this I would like to invite our next speaker, who is Professor Shobana Sharma. So Professor Shobana Sharma is retired as a senior professor and the chairperson of biology department, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, in 2018. And she has worked extensively on parasite biology and immunology, in particular on malaria, over the last 3 decades. And even madam has retired. Actually, such women never retire, they continue to work throughout their life. So she has published over 120 publications in journals of high standards and repute, which include Science, Journal of Immunology, PLOS, Pathogen, Infection, and so on. She has collaborated extensively and procured extramural funds from several internal as well as external sources. She has several awards on her name for her work, such as Excellence in Molecular Aspects of Vector-Borne Diseases, Visitex Foundation Vigyan Ratna Award in Science, Professor M.R. Baichwal Visiting Fellowship in Pharmaceutical Science and Technology, Pratima and Sucharu Chakrabarti Science Saman Award, and along with collaborators at our very own institute, that is Institute of Chemical Technology, and she is currently in the process of commercializing nanolipid carrier-based anti-malarial drug delivery. Not only this, but she's also very active in empowering and encouraging women. Her role in this aspect is recognized in many ways. She has been featured in books such as Lilavati's Daughters, which is published by Indian Academy of Science. This book is available online on website of INSA, and Women Scientists Reflections, Challenges and Breaking Boundaries. She has been so motivating and inspiring women, for women like me who are looking towards you, madam, as a role model. So she has published by these books by Oxford University Press, and she is currently chair of the INSA Women in Science panel. So with this introduction, I am so thankful, Shobana madam, for your acceptance to be here as one of the speaker in today's program. And we are very thank you for your talk and acceptance. So over to you. Shobna madam. Unmute madam yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Yeah, little louder if you can be. I think she's out of the meeting, maybe because of the technical internet issue. Shobna madam is out of the internet. Shobna madam, are you there?
No, Shalini looks like she's lost connection.
Yes, so can we move ahead with the Anandita? Thank you so much being here as a survivor. Although because of these technical difficulties, so we will move ahead with our next speaker, and by the time Shobna madam would join.
Yeah, maybe you could send her a message.
Yes, I will send, but before that, I will start with our your introduction. I'll give the introduction and then we can start. Thank you so much, Anandita, being here on time and before the time. So, Dr. Anandita is my buddy. I met her during Global Young Academy. So, when I was about to join as a new member, she was assigned to me as my buddy. And since then, buddy means the one who guides, the one who helps, the one who mentors, and beyond that. So she has been there with me for past 3 years and mentoring like my elder sister. So Dr. Anandita Bhadra is a behavioral biologist at the Department of Biological Sciences, ISER Kolkata. She has founded the Dog Lab at ISER Kolkata, and which is engaged in studying the behavior ecology and cognitive abilities of dogs using the free-ranging stray dogs in India as a model system. And she's particularly interested in understanding the evolution of dog-human relationship. And throughout this last few many months, I have seen this topic is so interesting that she has delivered so many lectures, international lectures, seminars on this very topic. And Dr. Bhadra is the recipient of INSA Young Scientist Award, SERB Women Excellence Award, and the IAP Young Scientist Award. She was involved in the founding of the Indian National Young Academy of Science in 2014, and she was also the chairperson of INIAS during its first 3 years of existence. She has been a member of Global Young Academy since 2016, and she has brought many changes and very positive changes in even being as a member of very active member of Global Young Academy, and therefore because of that very active contribution, she is presently a co-chair of Global Young Academy. And Anandita believes in the responsibility of a scientist in engaging with the society and is actively engaged in various science outreach activities. I always wonder whenever I see and follow her on social media, wherein many international national organizations put up the banners of her talk. So every other alternate day, Anandita has a talk, whether it is for a small children or elders or for women or for scientists, for technical person. So it always amazes me that how she manages so many science outreach activity. So she is currently also the Associate Dean of International Relations in Outreach at ISER Kolkata. And not only that, but she is also leading the Bangla theatre group Mukhosh with her husband, and of course I would say entire family. And she's a great mother, great women. And so thank you, Dr. Anandita, for being here, and I'm looking forward for your inspiring career journey, and you will be talking on dreams to come true. Over to you, Anandita.
Thank you, Shalini. I always get a bit embarrassed when people give me such fantastic introductions. I will try to share my screen, and do let me know if you can see this. I have prepared a few slides just to kind of keep myself on track and on time. I don't want to, keep people engaged for too long. So is my slide visible?
Yes, it is
Okay.
visible very much.
So I tried to put together the story of my life until now in terms of academics and a bit of personal experiences. The idea was to talk about, how people can succeed even not being successes all the time. And that's why I say that some dreams do come true. And this image on the slide is something that I had drawn long time back, kind of a depiction of sometimes messy, and always very colorful way in which I tend to dream. So when I was a kid, I was growing up in a joint family, something which you don't find in India anymore. And I was the darling of the family, being the only kid in the family with grandparents, uncles, parents, everyone. And I had a very extended family. And my family had a lot of dreams for me. I belong to a family where they firmly believe in the power of education. So I was, of course, sent off to school. And I went to a good school, an English medium school in Kolkata. I had that privilege. And my family wanted me to grow up and become a doctor. And this was kind of drilled into my head so early on in life that only thing that I ever wanted to become myself was a doctor. I was always engaged in many hobbies and many extracurricular activities, which I kind of imbibed from a good singer, a good dancer, a good actor, and she tried to inculcate all of this in me. So I was also engaging in a lot of things, both at home and in school. And while doing this, being the only child in the house, I had to invent games to keep myself busy. And other than storytelling from my grandfather, and I didn't have anyone to teach, and those days you didn't have too many toys, so I just taught the furniture in the house, and that was my favorite engagement, which eventually became a real life engagement because I started having cousins, my sister, and then their friends in the neighborhood, and there would be sessions on weekends when all the kids would come to learn maths and English, and I would do these extended sessions of teaching. And eventually I started doing tuitions for earning my pocket money. And I was very proud that I don't take pocket money from my father ever since I was in class 11. And then in school, of course, I need to be a doctor. I was always interested in science. Biology became my favorite subject, thanks to some of the very interesting things that we did in school and the fantastic teaching I received. While I was interested in other things too, I, of course, had to write the joint entrance exam, and I flunked. In those days, you had a few hundred seats only for medical, and this was a disaster. I was considered a failure, and there was confusion. What do I do in life? There was ostracization. People thought this girl who was supposed to be a good student, see, she didn't even get through the joint entrance exam. That, is a real black mark in your career if that happens. And then I was, very confused. But then some people advised that why don't you go on and do a degree in biological sciences? So I went and enrolled myself in a zoology honors course. The idea was 1 year you also prepare yourself, and then you apply for the we're doing. But then I started enjoying myself, learning zoology. I kind of liked everything I learned because finally it was biology, a subject which I liked. And I had a lot of inspiring teachers. This is when I had to appear for the joint entrance again. And this time I doodled on the answer script without telling my parents because I didn't want to get through. And I was worried that I knew all the answers. What if I get through medical and then I have to leave my zoology course? I told this to my parents only many years later. And then during my BSc second year, we went on a field trip to IISc. Thanks to Professor Shilanjan Bhattacharya, who was this new, inspiring, very dashing faculty who always had new ideas. And he was a graduate from IISc. He took us there, and that gave me a dream because there we heard what research was all about. I wanted to go to IISc too as a PhD student. I graduated after my BSc with good marks and a rank in the university, but I had no notion what research meant. Those days, BSc students did not learn about research, you only read textbooks. Went on to do a master's in zoology, And at this time, at the end of my master's, while my exams were going on, I got the interview call and I succeeded in getting a seat in IISc through the entrance interview. That was my first big dream come true. Of course, I went off to IISc and life took a complete, new shape. I was fascinated by everything. In fact, the first time I came back home and the vacation, I started feeling homesick for IISc. That's something that does not normally happen to people who go to hostel for the first time. But I just loved IISc, everything about IISc. There, of course, I had the most wonderful mentor anybody can ever have, Professor Raghavendra Gadadkar, who still remains my mentor. Anytime I have a problem, I pick up the phone and call him. And I worked on this fascinating social wasp, which I will show a nicer picture to you about. In IISc, about a year after I went there, I also was engaged again in extracurricular activities, among other things, theater. And through theater, I happened to meet the most important person in my life, who happens to be my husband now. And then during my PhD, this is a nest of Rhopliria marginata, I politics of this insect society to understand how queens are produced, how the wasps in the colony get to know that the queen has gone, how she maintains her queenship, so on and so forth. I learned a lot. I learned from my seniors. I loved the brainstorming sessions, which we had over endless walks and endless cups of coffee. I learned by training interns and junior. I got really into teaching then. I learned from all the failed experiments that I went through. Each experiment taught me something or the other, no matter whether it failed or not. The thrill of success, the thrill of that first publication, every one of us who have done research know what it is to see your name on a paper for the first time. And engaging in a large range of activities while I was in IISc. In fact, after my colloquium, a lot of people came and told me, when did you do all this work? You were always doing other things. I was doing theater. I was an editor in the students run magazine. I was doing counseling. I was doing dance, all kinds of things that you could think of. And I was also actively engaged at the Center for Contemporary Studies, which Professor Gadadkar had founded. And in all of this, I think, through my interactions, through my learning, all these years in PhD, I started understanding what the philosophy in the PhD means, and that is very important. I, of course, finished my thesis and I submitted it on consider quite an achievement, especially because when I was going to have a baby, a lot of people told me, your PhD is gone. I just made a point by submitting it on his birthday and saying, no, I did get my PhD and I do have a son. And after this, I continued as a research assistant in the associate in the lab for some time. I was undecided about the future because my priority at that time was my family. I didn't know what to do. And of course, Professor Gadadkar was always there to advise. And he said, why don't you try applying to the IISERs? IISER Pune and IISER Kolkata had just started in 2006, and I submitted my thesis in 2007. And I started wondering, am I ready to be a researcher, to lead a lab, to be a real life teacher, taking responsibility? It is at the end of 2009 that I also got the INSA Young Scientist Award. I applied to IISER Kolkata. This is when I realized that I need to be independent. I will be getting the opportunity to really teach, but then the family. And then we had to take a lot of questions into consideration and made a choice. Both of us applied to IISER Kolkata, and thankfully we got through, both together, Oyan in physics and me in biology, and our life started. But then before I applied, I had to decide on what I wanted to work on. I had 3 mini proposals prepared. We had a long brainstorming session, and finally I had my model system, the stray dogs, because they were interesting, because of the ease of access, and because of the novelty, because nobody had studied stray dogs in detail, and they posed a good the set of questions which could be explored. So I decided to work on dogs. In IISER, when I came in 2009, and then as I continued till 2011, we had a lot of great students, which was a lot of fun. I loved the teaching. I loved the fact that we had a lot of young people who we could interact with. All the faculty were our age. There was a lot of camaraderie. We were all involved in decision-making processes, procedures, setting up things, and research was progressing well. I had got my first grant in 2010 itself, and we all felt we were making history because, we were building an institution. Then I had been given a contractual position because I did not have the necessary 3-year post-PhD experience, with the understanding, verbal understanding, that this is a matter of time, and then this gets into regularization. But what I got is a termination letter. I started my struggle for survival, but I still had my dreams. I don't want to go into all the negativities. Anybody interested can go pick up this article, which I wrote way back for India Bioscience, where I talk about all of these negative experiences. And I think especially women scientists need to read some of this. People like us go through. And I also had my daughter in 2011. So this was like a very positive experience, but also there was a lot of negativity in life. Continued, the director changed, but my struggle continued for me in terms of my position. But something beautiful happened. I was involved in the founding of INEAS. INEAS was born officially in 2014 December, and this was the first meeting we had in 2015. And this was like a fantastic time, building something completely from scratch. We were really making history. During this process, I had awards, I had recognition, but my institute did not recognize me. Then finally, I became an assistant professor, regularized in 2016. As late as 2016, I like to say, I did not have any service record in ISER from 2009 June to 2016 February. And I did not have any recognition for all the services, though I had papers. Everything just happened. But I did not give up. I kept dreaming. I kept working. And INEAS was growing. I had become a member of the GYA. I was able to contribute to the GYA. And I was going and talking about my research in global platforms. I was interacting with interesting people. And my first student graduated. That was something for the lab. I was doing a lot of outreach. And professor in 2019, when Professor Shorapal, the current director, joined, it was a time for change. I was International Relations and Outreach. I got elected to the GY Executive Committee. But while I was doing all of this, many of my colleagues were asking me, why do you waste time in all of this? Why can't you just do your research? A lot of media, scientific media, we got Science News, we got Nat Geo, we got and all kinds of media kept covering our work. All I heard was, she doesn't even do science. Colleagues told my students, why do you need to waste your time sitting and looking at dogs? You can sit in the AC and just write down anything. Nobody will care what research you do. You can fudge data so easily. People told my students, don't join this lab because this is not even science. What kind of research is this? Following dogs around. That also stray dogs. That's the kind of criticism I lived with. People told me, do you pay journalists to write about your science? I didn't care. I kept on doing what I do best. That is my work. I learned a lot of lessons. I learned the importance of asking questions early during my PhD from my supervisor. I learned the importance of treating people with dignity. I learned how important mentorship is, and I try to be a good mentor to my students as far as possible, because the value of perseverance, which is what has helped me strive on and on and on. Satisfaction of leading a research field rather than following whatever is done in the global north, because today people in Europe and the US are trying to collaborate with me, trying to find dogs in other developing countries of the world to emulate our research, which gives me immense amount of satisfaction. And in all of this, a recent achievement, which I like to highlight, of course, here is I was recently awarded the Janki Amal Fellowship. I don't really highlight awards, but this was special because I got associated with the name of somebody I really look up to, and I could get the free-ranging dogs or the stray dogs put on the certificate, stamping out to the world that I do something which is important. So thank you, DBT. I will end here thanking the people who matter, my family, my students, Professor Gadakar and Geeta, who have been family to me, the GYA, NAS families, my friends at ISER Kolkata, who have helped me go through all of this by my dark days. And because of all of these people, I managed to wear the many hats and juggle the many responsibilities. This is a cliched image, but this is true to some extent. All of us women who are out there trying to make ourselves world need to go through this. And I could not do this if I did not have the support of so many people. So I will stop here, thanking Shalini, especially for the invitation, ICT, NEAS and GYA for this conference. And thank you for your patience.
Wow, thank you so much, Anandita. I am literally getting goosebumps. Such an inspiring story you have, although the time is very limited and that is why you had to skip. But we would like to, hear your story of struggle in detail. I have seen you have published in such a good journals and you have appeared in so many medias and you have such an interesting, inspiring, encouraging, motivational story for all the women across the entire world, and that is why I insisted that you must share your story of struggle. We see that today also as a women we have to do and wear many hats, and those things that you have shared with us are that will inspire the next generation of women, the younger women like me. And being a woman, I know that you have proven through your story that it is a celebration. No matter what hurdles, no matter what challenges one faces, we should embrace these challenges every day. Being a woman itself, you have showed it through your story that how one can dream and not afraid of all these hurdles and challenges. So we will have many questions for you, Anandita, at the end of the session, and we will move ahead with our next presentation. Thank you so much once again being here today,
My
Anandita.
pleasure.
Yeah. So we have today with us Dr. Nafisa Ismail. Hello, Nafisa. Thank you so
Hi,
much
Shalini.
being here. So nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I know that you have to immediately after this talk, you have to go to Women in Science Without Border talk. But your research and talk is so interesting that I insisted and requested, and you accepted our request to be here to deliver a very interesting talk. So Dr. Nafisa is a very good friend of mine, and I met her last year during Global Young Academy's AGM, where she was elected as a new member of Global Young Academy, and at the same time she took a new leadership role of leading the Women in Science working group of Global Young Academy, where I was leading, and the group is near to my heart. And Nafisa is doing along with Mena so well, doing so many activities for women in science, be it empowering them or giving so many lectures related to their health. So Dr. Nafisa is an associate professor at School of Psychology at the University of Ottawa and the holder of a university research chair in stress and mental health. Such an important issue. And during this COVID pandemic, I'm sure Nafisa, you have contributed, because I have read in Nature and so many other big journals that because of this COVID-19 pandemic, the stress and the mental health, particularly women have been, and also men have been going through a lot of stress and mental health. Nafisa has obtained her PhD from Concordia University in 2009, and she then completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Massachusetts and joined the University of Ottawa in 2012. Her research expertise is in neuroimmunology, and neuroendocrinology. She was recently awarded Young Researcher of Year by the University of Ottawa and Early Researcher Award by the Province of Ontario. She's also a member of Global Young Academy, and currently she is leading Women in Science role of Global Young Academy's working group. And she has a very, very interesting topic to talk on today, that is how oral contraceptives affect women's health. And thank you so much, Nafisa, once again. And over to you.
Thank you so much, Shalini, for this beautiful introduction. I am truly humbled by your kind words and excited to have the opportunity to share these new findings from our lab. Today I'm going to talk to you about how oral contraceptives affect our brain. Oral contraceptives, or more commonly known as combined oral contraceptive pills, which I'm now going to refer to as OCs, are the most widely used method of reversible contraception. They constitute of synthetic estradiol and progesterone that bind to endogenous estradiol and progesterone receptors and take over their actions. And even though oral contraceptives have been used since the 1970s, and we do see that more than 100 million women around the world use oral contraceptives, little is unfortunately known about the impact of oral contraceptives beyond their contraceptive use. So we now know that they play several other roles where they impact brain function, brain structure. They also impact mood, and they also impact metabolism and other aspects of women's health as well. There has been since the 1970s many reports from women complaining of emotional liability after using oral contraceptives, irritability, depression, magnification of premenstrual syndromes. That was seen in about 56% of the women taking oral contraceptives. And we do see that about 30% of women will discontinue using oral contraceptives within the first 3 months of beginning to take them due to psychological side effects. And this misunderstanding or lack of a knowledge around what is happening between usage of oral contraceptive and the impact on of mental health in women is not known at all, and brings, I would say, an important light on the fact that many issues around women's health are not well investigated. The focus is mainly on health issues that affect both men and women, or that are particular to men, but a lot of disorders that are specific to women's health remain unattended, unfortunately. And when it comes to oral contraceptive, well, for one, there is a lack of research, but then with the little research that has been done with oral contraceptives, we do see a lack of consensus too in the findings. And that has to do with the fact that there are significant differences in the methodology used by various researchers. So depression, as Shalini mentioned, is a serious problem in our society. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, okay. So it is currently affecting a good majority of the population worldwide. And according to the World Health Organization, it is going to become the global burden of disease. And the problem is that even though depression is so widespread, little is known about its pathophysiology. And so we don't yet have any effective treatment for depression. I would say that more than 50% of individuals suffering from depression appear to be treatment resistant. And that is no coincidence, it's nothing to do with the individuals themselves, but simply to the fact that we know so little about the pathophysiology of depression that we don't have effective treatments for it, unfortunately. And as Shalini mentioned earlier, we know that with the current pandemic and the global issues that we have been undergoing for the past year, the rates of depression have skyrocketed. So we can only expect the World Health Organization to be revising these statistics and probably ranking it as the global cause of disease burden much earlier than 2030. So we know some information about depression. For example, we know that it is associated with a dysfunction in monoamine neurotransmission. We know that because that's what we've been studying for the past decades, and the current pharmacological treatments that we have target monoamine neurotransmission. But then we also know that these pharmacological treatments are not quite effective, suggesting that there is more to depression than simply a dysfunction in monoamine neurotransmission. We also know that stressful life events can induce depression and anxiety. And here I'm referring to stressful life events that are not only going to activate the stress response in individuals, but also the immune response. So I'm referring to psychosocial stressors, abuse, violence, etc. We also know that most cases of depression and anxiety tend to begin during puberty and adolescence, with a mean age onset of 14 years of age. And we also see that women tend to be more susceptible to developing depression. In fact, as of puberty and adolescence, women become 2 times more likely to developing depression than men. So we are really intrigued in understanding why women are becoming more likely to developing depression and even anxiety during puberty and adolescence. What changes? We know that it's beyond the normal hormonal changes because we have already investigated that. But we wondered whether there is a link maybe between using oral contraceptives during puberty and the increased vulnerability to mental illnesses. No. So puberty, the reason why we are focusing on that period is that it is a critical period of development for sexual maturation. We see that it is during this period that the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis become active. And we see that happening in the brain where the neurons in the hypothalamus are going to start producing gonadotropin releasing hormone that is then going to activate the pituitary gland to produce gonadotropins, luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone to activate the gonads, the testicles and the ovaries that are then going to start producing testosterone, estrogens and progesterone, which are then going to impact various parts of the body and including the brain. It's also during this period that we see the development of secondary sexual characteristics. And we also see important brain reorganization and remodeling during this period. And this brain reorganization and remodeling during puberty is governed by the gonadal hormones, so by the testosterone and the estrogens and the progesterone produced by our gonads. We also see that during this period, there is an increased usage of oral contraceptives, not necessarily because girls are sexually active, but sometimes it's for regulatory purposes, to regulate acne, for instance, to regulate heavy premenstrual syndromes. So for a lot of purposes other than contraception, oral contraceptives are regularly prescribed to girls. And we see that these oral contraceptives then bind to the same receptors as the endogenous hormones, estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone. And they take over the action of the endogenous hormones. So what worries us is that we're then leaving the reorganization and remodeling of the brain to these synthetic hormones. And perhaps this is what may be increasing then the vulnerability to mood disorders. But because of the lack of research, we don't know yet, and we don't yet understand the link between the two. So in my lab then, we wanted to investigate whether using oral contraceptives during puberty can affect brain structure. And for that, we had participants coming to our lab, the participants that were using oral contraceptives, but that had either begun using oral contraceptives during puberty, and we had 12 women in that group, or they began using oral contraceptives in adulthood. And there we had 15 participants in that group. We also included women that were naturally cycling, and that were either part of, they were either in their follicular phase, the pre-ovulatory phase, or the luteal phase of their menstrual cycle. The reason why we try to capture the women at the different stages of the menstrual cycle is because we know that there are natural changes in hormones, namely in estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone throughout the menstrual cycle. And we wanted to make sure that we are able to capture these different levels of hormones in the women, because we wanted to make sure that the differences that we will see between our groups are not simply artifacts of natural changes in hormones, because we do know that throughout the cycle, these hormones are in itself going to impact brain structure and function. So throughout the menstrual cycle, women undergo structural and functional changes in their brain continuously. So this is why we wanted to make sure that we had these 3 periods of the menstrual cycle represented amongst our groups. So just to give you a little bit more information about the inclusion criteria that we use for our participants, for the oral contraceptive users, as I said, we had 2 groups, women that either began using oral contraceptives during puberty or they began using them during adulthood. And what we found, what we limited our sample size to is that the women that started oral contraceptives during puberty had to have begun using them within 6 months of menarche, so within 6 months of first starting their menstruation. And the adults had to have begun using oral contraceptives after the age of 18, and they had to be using it for at least 3 months consecutively before participating in the study. For the naturally cycling women, they had to have never been exposed to oral contraceptives, and they had to be either in the follicular phase, so within days 2 and 6 of their menstrual cycle, or the pre-ovulatory phase within days 10 and 14 of their menstrual cycle, or within the luteal phase with days 18 to 24 of their menstrual cycle. Then we looked at gray matter volume in these women. So gray matter volume is important because we're focusing here on cell bodies and cell bodies of neurons. So we wanted to see whether there is any difference in gray matter volume, first between women that are using oral contraceptives and those that are not. And we found that there was a significant decrease in gray matter volume in women that were using oral contraceptives compared to those that were naturally cycling in the right putamen as well as in the left postcentral gyrus. The right putamen is involved in emotional responding and connectivity between information and creation of memories. And the postcentral gyrus is involved in voluntary movement. So guiding movement and executing a movement that is intentional. So we found a difference in gray matter volume in these 2 brain regions between women that were using oral contraceptives and those that were not. We also noted a decrease in white matter volume. White matter volume is mainly focusing on myelinated axons. So here we found that oral contraceptives users had greater white matter volume in the right putamen as well as in the left parahippocampal gyrus compared to naturally cycling women. We also saw that women who had begun using oral contraceptives during puberty showed an increase in white matter volume in the right fusiform gyrus. And these are the illustrations that are representative of our findings. So far, what these results show us is that there are structural changes, regional volume changes in OC users, where we see an increase in, that seems to be compensated by an increase in white matter volume. So where we see a decrease in gray matter volume, we then see an increase in white matter volume. It's not clear whether the brain is trying to compensate for the reduction in gray matter volume by increasing white matter volume. That is something that we need to investigate further. Nevertheless, we can see that using oral contraceptives, so starting oral contraceptives during puberty, does seem to affect brain structure in the long term. So this was, individuals that started oral contraceptives quite early in their teenage years, but we tested them only as they were adults, and we are still seeing these structural brain differences. So we need to investigate this further, but we're hopeful that these findings may help us maybe understand better the mechanism through which oral contraceptives affect the brain and perhaps the mood of women. But to take this a little bit further, we then wondered whether using oral contraceptives could impact brain function. So for that, we exposed naturally cycling women and oral contraceptive users to a customized NBAC task, where we exposed them to a set of neutral, positive, and negative pictures. And the women had to remember 2 pictures earlier or 1 picture earlier, whichever one they had seen, depending on the questions that they were being asked. And what we found is that while doing this task, women that were on oral contraceptives displayed greater brain activity in response to the two-back task with negative pictures. So women on oral contraceptives were responding a lot more, their brain was responding a lot more when they were shown negative images. And for women that began using oral contraceptives during puberty, showed increased brain activity when they were asked to perform a 2-back task versus a 1-back task. So when they were asked to remember 2 pictures earlier instead of 1 picture earlier. And that shows then that the brain of women that has used oral contraceptives perhaps needs to work a little bit harder to process these images and recognize the images and remember the images that they had seen a little while longer ago. So does oral contraceptive during puberty affect resting state functional connectivity? The reason why we were interested in looking at that is because it's interesting to see how the brain responds when it's presented with a stimulus, but what about its activity at rest? Many researchers have shown in the past that altered resting state functional connectivity is linked to mental illnesses later in life. And so what this means is that the way that the brain interacts with, the way that different regions in the brain interact with one another during a state of inactivity can increase the vulnerability of an individual to mental illnesses. So resting state functional connectivity is rhythmic and synchronized fluctuations in brain activity between different groups of regions that create a network. And the idea here is to observe these rhythmic, synchronized fluctuations in brain activity during the resting state, so a period of inactivity. And so we wanted to see whether resting state functional connectivity in a few networks that we had selected, namely the limbic and executive networks, can explain and provide insight into the task-related bold differences between oral contraceptive users and naturally cycling women. So we wanted to see whether these changes in functional connectivity could explain or could correlate with some of the structural differences that we had seen amongst women that were using oral contraceptives. What we found is that indeed women that are using oral contraceptives show greater resting state functional connectivity in salience, central executive and reward networks compared to naturally cycling women. And Oral contraceptive users also show increased functional connectivity between the putamen and the frontal cortex compared to naturally cycling women. And those who began using oral contraceptives during puberty show increased resting state functional connectivity in the salience network compared to adult onset users. Now, the salience network is very interesting because it is the neural network that is in charge of filtering important information. So it is the network that will screen out non-important information versus important information. And in this case, it sort of shows us by showing this increased functional state connectivity that women who begin using oral contraceptives during puberty could have more difficulty in screening out stimuli that are important versus those that are less important. So in conclusion, there is definitely a lot of work still left to do in this field, but we do see with this current research that there is general neurophysiological differences in brain structure and function between women that are using oral contraceptives and those that are not. We also see that using oral contraceptives during puberty could have long-term impacts on structural brain volume, task-induced brain activity, resting state brain activity, which could then impact several aspects of behavior, including stress reactivity, and then which would also impact mental health. So taken together, this research informs women brain health by highlighting potential neural and behavioral consequences of oral contraceptive use and circulating ovarian steroid hormones. With that, I would like to thank the graduate students in my lab. This work was primarily conducted by my graduate student, Rupali Sharma, and also other graduate students that helped her with this work. Many undergraduate students were also involved in this work. We also had many international visiting students participating in this research. So we are very, very grateful for all our funding sources, as well as the University of Ottawa, the School of Psychology, and the Institute of Brain and Mind Research. And with that, I would like to also thank you all for attending today's function and my presentation. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Nafisa. It was so wonderful listening to this topic, which is directly relevant to women's health. And this is the topic is not only important to women, but also the young girls who will become tomorrow women. And this is the topic which is not much discussed, talked about. I do not know about how it is in developed country, but at least developing country like India here, even consumption of that pill nobody talks about. And
yeah, it's the same. It's the same for us too, unfortunately. And you know, the idea with this research is not at all to discourage women from taking oral contraceptives or from encouraging them. We don't take that stand at all, but it's really just to inform women and girls so that everyone can make an informed decision when they are deciding to take these oral contraceptives.
wow, what a wonderful talk. I really liked this talk personally, and I'm sure today's women, those who listen to this talk, also will benefit and understand what is the impact of these pills, contraceptive pills. So thank you so much, Nafisa. Despite of your busy schedule, you have joined today and delivered your wonderful talk, and I look forward for your more interaction and association.
Thank you very much for having me.
So thank you everyone. Thank you audiences. I would like to thank you each one of you, and we are running live question and answer session. Either you can post your questions in the chat box on YouTube live chat box to us, and I will take those questions to our speakers. So at the end of today's talk by Professor Shobana Sharma and Dr. Almaz Taj Ivan, we will have the live question and answer session. So Yeah, because of the internet problem, we could not hear Professor Shobana Sharma, and she's right away here. Professor Shobana, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm sorry about the earlier mishap, but if you
No
want to have
problem.
the
It
next
is a
speaker first, please.
Yeah. So I have already given the introduction, madam. Please carry on to your talk on quest for research. Yeah. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, I will just
Share your.
share my screen.
You have shared your inbox.
Yeah. So can you see the talk
Yes.
now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Only make
Is
it
it
in
visible
slide.
to you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is visible and it has to be in slideshow.
Yeah, I'll go to the slideshow mode. Okay, so let me do this quickly. I'm sorry that last time I had the internet was out. I didn't realize for a while. So the topic of my talk is research, quest for truth. But in this talk, I will also highlight some of my research activities and give stress about challenges of women, challenges for women scientists like me, for instance. So scientific research is, of course, very, scientific methodology is very well known, but observational scientific research may or may not be true. For instance, sun rotates around the earth, or observations of nature. So for instance, these two Daphnia species, they actually belong to the same species, but they look different. And this is because exposed to chemical cues from predaceous fish induces these morphological changes. And mere observation might actually let you think that these are two different species. These days we have molecular tools, so we don't really need to worry so much. But when we looked at, when we do research on unknown subjects, so we actually, I will skip this slide. We actually look at the object in a very, I mean, we often are unable to look at the object in a holistic manner. So this is the standard story of an elephant being looked at or explored by 6 blind men and coming to completely different conclusions. So very often when we do research, we really don't know the whole picture, and we just get bits and pieces. And of course, if you have this observation, like it's a spear or it's a snake, and publish it, it's really not correct, but the truth catches up. Eventually, somebody will find the truth. Eventually, these have to be reproduced and validated independently. So research is great fun, but needs to really explore out the truth. Molecular explorations have become possible through various technologies. So even if you can't see things, you can use atomic force microscopy to image things, and so on. I will jump straight into the molecular biology of the malarial parasite, which is what we have been studying for a large number of years. Currently, I am working with ICT as an INSA honorary scientist. And these are the various lines of work which we have carried out. And I will just go through some of the phases of my life. So as a young girl, I had very strong support for academic proficiency from my parents. This is very common. Most parents want their children to do well academically, certainly. These days, there are other opportunities, but academics is like a basic. We were 3 sisters, and thus there was no real scope for sibling gender discrimination. But we lived a very protected life, and we stayed in Delhi during school and college days, and safety for young women was a major issue. Delhi is a very difficult city for young women. So in phase 2, I joined PhD program at Tata Institute in Mumbai. This was despite strong opposition from my father. He said, don't go away from home. You do whatever you want to do, PhD or whatever, from home. Because Mumbai was considered by him as a very corrupt city, film city, and so on. But nevertheless, I insisted on joining this program. I enjoyed the hugely academic and intellectual environment of Tata Institute, as also the safe habitats of Mumbai, thanks to the city. And these are excellent fuel for growing into a thinking and independent scientist. So you gain confidence that you can actually move around, be independent, do whatever you want, and go forward. My trajectory towards study of malaria was also a little meandering. I did masters in physical chemistry from Delhi University. And you know, physical chemistry or chemistry essentially is physical science. It's called physics, chemistry, mathematics stream. There's no biology there. So for 5 years, 3 years of bachelor's and 2 years of master's, I had no biology. But because one is so trained in quantitative sciences, picking up biology is not so difficult. So I did my PhD in plant biochemistry, but malaria study was facilitated by our head, Obaid Siddiqui. He was a visionary, actually. He just heard from these people that they were looking for a good postdoc and told me, you just go and give it a try. It's a molecular biology lab and you learn a lot. If you don't like it, you can always move on. But this just caught on. I loved working in that lab, molecular biology. The first gene, which is the circumsporozoid protein, which is the only malaria vaccine candidate tested in the field. This was followed by an immunology stint in Duke University. And I came back to TIFR with a job, and I was so excited about the possibility of a malaria vaccine. But I was extremely naive about epidemiological data in India. So the idea was really to look at immune responses of immune and susceptible and immune persons. So this was my first project, differential immunoscreen using sera samples from patient and immune persons from endemic areas. And that is when I realized that Mumbai hardly had any samples. So in those years, in 1987, when I joined, the annual cases in Mumbai was just about 250 to 400. Could hardly be called endemic. Incidentally, by 1994, this number increased to 40,000. And people were very upset with me. What have you done in Mumbai? Why have the cases gone up so much? And so on. It just happened to be one of those cycles where mosquitoes bred very, very rapidly and malaria increased. Nevertheless, Mumbai was not the place to look at immune adults who would have had malaria in their childhood, but not in their adulthood. You would have to go to endemic areas, and for that I had to take collaborators' help. These were field survey people, and they helped me enormously. And they got me about 100 samples of immune adults. We could get patient samples or susceptible people from all over India. And then this Cheryl, my first student, carried out this molecular differential immunoscreen, and we identified large number of proteins which antibodies against which were present only in the immune people and not in the susceptible people. And we did a lot of work subsequently on this set of proteins. In fact, some of them are listed here, and some of these were my students in 1993, and they carried out this work further. And this is how I mention molecular dissection of protective immunity. Subsequently, we worked on red cell memory in biology. This is collaboration with physicists, metabonomics, collaboration with chemists, and nanolipid carrier mediated drug delivery collaboration with pharmacologists. And this is generally what I have done in TIFR, and currently we are at ICT. Let me just touch on the problems faced by women. But before that, I should list my collaborators. I've had huge number of collaborators, and all the students and postdocs and master students, PhD students, master students, postdocs, technicians, I would like to acknowledge them for the work they have done in my group. But let me come to this topic of challenges faced by me as a young woman faculty. So the most important and first one is lack of proper mentors. So there were hardly any women faculty at the time I joined. In our department, we had a couple of, only one more woman faculty. And there were technicians, students, scientists, but faculty was lacking. I think mathematics had a couple of women faculties. So there were really, there was a gap in understanding the sensitivities of men to what kind of problems might be faced by women was just not there. So there was no time to network. Timings of meetings. People would call meetings in the evening when we would have to go pick up our children from wherever, you know, the maid would go or the creche would not. At that time, we didn't have a creche. So we really could not attend those meetings. This is lack of sensitivity. Problems during pregnancy, lack of facilities, for instance, childcare, toilets. I mean, there was so far fewer toilets. I think it was just, these are things that people don't think about. They just look at, oh, there will be so few women, so let's not have so many toilets. Let's not waste space. And similar amenities at conferences, meetings. I must admit that there was no discriminations in recruitment, pay, freedom of research topics, intramural funds for research, capital equipment usage, and all these other things, student allocations. However, I would specifically like to mention promotions and senior positions. So promotions were not lacking. It's just that promotions were basically for the same amount of work. So there was no handicap given to women, and I don't think women would want that handicap. But because of other problems, it comes a little slower. Nevertheless, the gap was not too much, maybe a year or year and a half between, other people, my peer groups. Senior positions and chairships, these were indeed offered, but I refused many of them because I thought I would not be able to do justice. And only once my children went out of our house for their college studies that I started accepting. And at one point I was a chair of 6 different committees because then I had time. And this is just a question of, how one can allow facilities which would help women, how one can support by giving more flexibility. There was no active difference, but there is just lack of sensitivity. So gender gap in science, many people talked about the gender gap reducing quite a bit. It's not quite a bit. This paper gives, I've just given one figure. It shows the difference between what where people are and where they expect to be in so many years. And in some fields, this catching up would take as much as 75 years. And this is a projection given huge number. They use some huge thousands and thousands of papers from which they collated this first authorship, last authorship, etc. And what may be the scene in India? In 1997, we organized a conference, And as you can see, there were about 24 women out of 65. I'm not counting their categories. Total number, that was 37. In 2011, 14 years later, we continued organizing, but I'm just showing the data 14 years later. And the number is more or less the same. So one cannot even say that it has gone up significantly by 15%. No, it remains. And this slow progress is what really becomes very difficult, because to have role models, to go for people to go to senior positions, you need the base to be much, much stronger. So this is an MHRD, Human Resource Development Department report. And this essentially shows a much rosier picture because they include all kinds of students and other women in this bar. But you can see that institute of national importance, it still remains so low. And we really need women in these categories to hit the glass ceiling. And typical representations in India at senior levels, academies, is of the order of 10 to 12%. That is much better than 10 years back, but still way, way below what is desirable. So I don't know when we will stop having Women's Day celebration and hit the 50% mark. This is, I think, my last slide. Way forward is using reservations. I don't like that so much. Greater opportunities for research exposure at all levels, proactive recruitment, sustained facilities to support women faculty, and most important, sensitivity and awareness. So we really need to have everyone along with us to be sensitized and aware of what needs to be done. And this just gives the references, and this is my last slide. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Shalini, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful talk. This is so inspiring, and I can imagine when you have showed the photographs of 1970s, and you are the only women scientist during in all the crowd of men. So it must be so scary, and we have many questions, but we will move ahead. And thank you so much. And we will have our panel discussion at the end of Dr. Almas Taj's talk. So I welcome Dr. Almas, who is a very good friend of mine, and I met Dr. Almas for the very first time in Global Young Academy's annual gathering at Halle, Germany, 2 years back. And Dr. Almas, I was attracted, and I became a very good friend because of our language. She is from Pakistan, and when you are in foreign land and if you get a chance to talk in Hindi or Urdu, you becomes automatically good friend. So thank you so much, Almas, for accepting our invitation and accepting our invitation, and especially sharing your own career story or career journey. So Dr. Almas has received her PhD degree in chemistry from Unicam, São Paulo, Brazil. And at present, she is running Zika Lab Diagnostics, a startup company, as a co-founder and principal investigator. She is also an independent science policy analyst, science diplomacy activist, and founder of Science Diplomacy Working Group within the Global Young Academies program. She is also executive committee member of Global Young Academy, the Chair Blair Foundation mentee for mentoring women in business program, London, UK, one of the 30 finalists of Global Innovation through Science and Technology program of ASE, that is American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, and the finalist of Falling Walls Venture, Berlin. She has authored many publications, and she has also given a lot of talks. Besides her academic career, she is a wonderful science outreach person. She had been an anchor person and producer of radio programs on FM and AM for 4 years, and also on national TV channels for 1 year. And she is the member of American Association for Advancement of Sciences, the American Society for Mass Spectrometry, and the Brazilian Society of Mass Spectrophotometry as well. And her major focus areas of her scientific lab research are renewable energy, wastewater from waste biomass, sediment quality analysis, and they are also research is linked to Zika and breast cancer. So thank you, Dr. Almas, once again, and we are very happy here to have you with us and eager to listen to your exciting and inspiring story. Over to you, Almas.
Thank you very much, Shalini. You gave such a long introduction of mine, and now I'm, thinking about what should I, share in my slides, because you already have said so much. But I will try my best to, inspire young women out there who are listening to me. Thank you very much for the invitation. So my presentation today, the title of my presentation is Career and Leadership in Science. I would try my best to, let me just, okay, so perfect. So share my career a little bit with all of you, and if you have any questions, you may ask, and I would also try to share some of the tips and the tricks that young women as well, they need to listen from someone, although most of them you all already know. So about my journey, this is my timeline. I had my master's from Pakistan, as Shalini already told all of you that originally I'm from Pakistan, but I'm living right now in Brazil. So I came to Brazil for doing my PhD, and career, my studies, my job, they kept me staying here, and I also continued here. So in 2015, I started my journey as an entrepreneur and also in science leadership. I also served as a visiting professor in a Brazilian university after passing a public exam here. And currently I'm independent science and policy, research policy analyst and co-founder of the Zika Lab Diagnostics in Brazil with one of my friends. So I will talk about my science journey that I had here. The first project that was really wonderful was my PhD project that I had with my PhD advisor in State University of Campinas, Brazil, that is located in the state of São Paulo. So what we did, we tried to utilize orange bagasse, because Brazil is the largest producer of oranges, and every year we have a problem with millions of tons of orange waste. So we in our lab tried to utilize that so-called waste for producing some value-added products. So you can see here in this slide, we extracted essential oil, pectin, hesperidine, nanocellulose, and the biggest thing that we were trying to explore, in a more economical way, was bioethanol. So we had very nice results. We patented those results, and our patent got licensed. And the other project that I had was, and in fact is, about Zika virus detection. So microcephaly happened, this condition happened back in 2015 and 16 in Brazil, where WHO declared emergency, actually, because there were many cases of children, newly born children, born with small heads, And what was common that in all of those children and the mothers, the common thing was Zika virus, the presence of Zika virus. And the challenge that we have, clinically for Zika detection is that sometimes it is asymptomatic, sometimes it is symptomatic, and also if it is symptomatic, so patients, they show the symptoms are very similar to the infection caused due to chikungunya virus and due to Zika, due to dengue virus. So because of these similarities, we have so many cases of false diagnosis, unnoticed co-infections, and also it's a big challenge, on a clinical basis. So we developed a methodology, a solution that is early, fast, precise, and differential diagnostic test. And on the basis of the mass spectrometric analysis, and through this test, we can detect Zika virus both in symptomatic and asymptomatic infected people. This was all about a bit of research and why, I mean, there are so many other projects as well that I did, but I specifically mentioned these two because I will take all of you to my entrepreneurial journey that I had on the basis of these two, because, you know, I had collaborators as well. I was not alone in these projects, because all of us, we know that within the scientific labs, when we work in collaborations. And those collaborators, they were part of these projects everywhere where I go. But we will talk about this journey a little bit later in the slides. Now, the question is that, what was that motivation that took me out of the lab? So I am a PhD doctor, but most of the things that I do, they are not the ones that I was taught within my laboratory. So the scientific motivation that I had beyond lab was one thing that I always used to, think about, that on a bench scale, we do so much research, but what is the bigger impact that research has, apart from publishing papers? So this was that made me think a lot, and I started exploring my own opportunities or creating my own opportunities. So those explorations, the search, to know different and linking my science to society took me to the journey of entrepreneurship, also to science and policy interface, to social work organizations. I got to know about the concept of science diplomacy, and also about science communication. So let's start talking about all this, why this is important. I am from science, but I believe science is an art that should be used for improving lives. And if you're not using this science that you do in your labs for improving lives, there is definitely, some problems. So try, seeing the bigger picture of whatever you are doing in your lab. And let's see some of the things that I discovered. The first thing was science diplomacy. What is science diplomacy? Science diplomacy actually is it's an overarching goal of using science for building bridges between nations. So it was a very nice concept that I got to know in my in a workshop that I had. Thanks to TWAS and AAAS for organizing that and for selecting me to have that wonderful experience. This was back in 2016. And it was a wonderful experience where I learned how we can use science in a bigger picture for building bridges between nations. And, science has a lot more to do. It can do a lot more than just, publishing articles and, all that stuff. Last year, I was part of this team of AIMSIT Sao Paulo Science and Innovation Diplomacy School. So if you are listening to me, you can note down all these links, search them on the internet, go for it. They are the schools where you can learn about the concepts of science diplomacy. And I was the monitor of the team Asia, and also science diplomacy in South Asia. I will not go in detail. And probably Shalini or Anindita already has shared something about this. If they haven't, so go on the GYA website and search for Science Diplomacy in South Asia, a group that we are also part of. We three are part of that group. In fact, I was the founder. Anindita was the first co-lead of that group. And within this group, we recently had a workshop where we trained 100 members from South Asia for learning this concept and how they can be part of, this science diplomacy process that we want to start in the region. Now, entrepreneurship in science, how was my journey and how it began? It was in BioVision conference, France, where first time back in 2015, I was given a chance for presenting my PhD project. And for the very first time, I presented my lab project, not to the scientists, but to investors. And the questions that they asked me, they were really eye-openers, for me. And I started thinking about my project in a different way. It was a kind of thing that made me think how I can think more, practically about the practical applications of what I was doing on the bench scale. This was the beginning, and then my project was among the 7 best projects in this workshop, in this conference. And then again, I presented the same project that was among top 30 projects all over the world, and this gave me that opportunity to present it on GES, Global Entrepreneurship Summit, that was arranged by White House. It was the initiative of President Obama. So I had chance for listening to President Obama twice, once in Kenya, and the next time was in next year in Silicon Valley. And then 2018, the same conference platform invited me to be a mentor for young generation of entrepreneurs in Global Entrepreneurship Congress, GEC, that was again in collaboration with US Department of State and President Erdogan. And 2009, my project of Zika lab diagnostics, along with my other collaborator, Fabio, we won, we were the finalists of Falling Walls Venture, and we were invited to present this project in Germany. So we presented that, and it was really great experience. The next thing that I am working with young scientists, in GYA, I would say. There are some other platforms as well, but I think the exposure that GYA gives, this is wonderful and tremendous. So the other thing that you guys also can try is to think about how science can be used for changing society. So for that reason, it's very important to have integration and to have multidisciplinarity. So within the Global Young Academy, you can see here our co-chair Anindithya already. I think she has given the talk. I joined a bit late, so I couldn't hear that, but definitely I'm going to go back to the recording for listening. So Shalini is also there. We have this wonderful team for working. We have elected members, around 200 from 70 different countries, and we are working together for making this world a better place. So what we do, we support, we engage, and we build science capacity for promoting the science education and science policy integration. This was our team that represented last time in Global Health Summit at Berlin, where we talked about academia industry partnership, something more practical, talking about the practical applications of the research we do within academia and what needs to be done for taking that to the next level for academic progress and for building bridges between academia and industry. This is one other project that I had with the Smart Villages initiative, because this initiative is a very great idea for rural electrification and also encouraging people not to go out of the small cities or rural cities, but yes, trying to utilize their local capacities, local entrepreneurs, encouraging them for giving the basic facilities, to the rural areas, so that people don't go out from, those regions and make the bigger cities more populated even. So we organize many different conferences and workshops. This was one of the initiatives that we had in collaboration with the GYA. So GYA had a collaboration with Smart Villages, and we helped them in organizing one-day session with the young researchers input in Thailand. And this is one of the things that I think I would consider it in communication area, because meeting with politicians and ambassadors, it gave me a new way of exploring how science can interact with the policymakers. So this goes to the next part, that is scientific communication. So scientific communication, I didn't mean that if you're a scientist, you should go just for talking to the policymakers and politicians, but you also should go to the bottom root, because from where we are, we need to see, we need to do, we need to return to our society as well. And it's very important for bringing the next generation of scientists to have to give the young generation some basic ideas, and to tell them why science is important and what science actually is, how it works. So there are many schools and colleges in South Asia where students actually, they don't know, in fact teachers as well, they don't know how a scientist looks like. So it's really important to explain about the scientific methodology and the ways science can change lives, but in a way that can be understandable by a common person. And it's not just about South Asia. In 2019, I had an experience to present my scientific data to audience from Europe. It's the photo from a metro station. So I presented my scientific research from lab in a very simple way to people who were passing by from the metro station. It was, to my surprise, there were many basic questions that, to my understanding, probably everyone knows, but I was wrong. Science is something that needs to be made, in a more easy way, so that a common person can understand. And I think this is a very huge and very big gap that exists. This is one of the reasons that even if we publish scientific articles in the newspaper, many times common people, they avoid reading them because they think that, oh, it is something that they won't be able to understand. So it's sometimes we think that, oh, this is a problem of just the, from the global south. But I would say that the global north, countries from the global north, they are not that much different in this aspect. For bringing the lives of the scientists, I recently had started a program on my social media. It's called Coffee with Scientists, where I bring stories from right now. It's just on about Pakistani female scientists, but yes, we have started a global chapter as well. So if you want to follow all channels, I will share in the next slide. So please feel free. Now the question comes, how to be a leader in science. So I have showed you, all of you, many slides, and said a lot about my career. But the thing is that it is still going on. I would not say that I would not consider still myself a leader, because I'm trying to bring some change out of all the opportunities that I get. So if you ask me how you can have a career like me or even better than me, definitely you have all the capabilities. So how you can be a leader? In my opinion, there are many ways to be a leader, but some of them I will share here. The first thing is that you need to lead yourself. Before leading someone else, you need to be a leader for your own self. You need to see, to have a vision about your own self. Okay, we say that I want to change society, I want to bring change in them, I want to bring change in the education system of my country, I want to bring equal opportunities to everyone. The thing is that first you need to see your own self, where you want to see yourself within the next 5 to 10 years. Then the second thing that is very important is engaging people around you, because if you're cutting yourself, too much, you won't be able to go ahead. You need to engage with people who are around you. You need to start from them, and you need to find leaders among those people who are around you, and definitely you will find. Being a leader doesn't mean that someone need to have a very high credential. Someone need to be a doctor, a PhD, or an engineer, or a doctor. No, for being a leader, you can have even, some leadership lessons from someone who is, running a dhaba, or someone who is having a, simple lifestyle, because everyone, you can learn something from, someone that actually you least expect. So don't underestimate people around you, learn from them, learn from the skills that they have that you can develop in your own self. and ask for help wherever you need. Don't be shy, because if you are shy today for asking help, maybe it will stop your growth. So never stop growing yourself. Always, if you are in need, ask for help and set bigger goals. There's a research that says that your goal should be always, something that you feel that, oh, it's just 60% chance that you can get that. So it means that your goal should be a lot more bigger than your imagination, so that you have a nice journey of challenges where you grow yourself to someone bigger than what you are. And then invest in communication skills. It's very important, because if you're someone who is not into others or knowing others or expressing yourself to others, it can close many doors to you. So you should know how to communicate, where to communicate, and this may help you in opening around you. Obviously, not everyone is going to help you, but still, you will find your ways. And then take risk. It's very important for taking risk, because risks, they always make us. And you don't take risk because you have fear. But the thing is that your fear can always die if you take that risk. If you face fear, it's going to die away. And last but not the least, I would say that travel. I have traveled to more than 15 different countries, and I must say, I must admit, I do admit, I'm completely a different person. I am a lot more acceptable to different climate changes, different food, different kinds of cultures, different kind of music. I enjoy everything today, and I'm completely a different person. I must say, a better version of myself. So definitely traveling is not that easy, because you have a cultural shock that can be good and be bad. So you can see here, it's a W curve. So all of you who have been into traveling or who have traveled abroad, not for just for tourism, but for staying and for learning something, you must know, or you would have faced all these difficulties of cultural shock, but it is worth. So the takeaway lesson from my today's presentation is dare to be different by thinking and acting different, and you are never going to regret that. These are my contact details. I am on all these social media platforms. So if you want to contact me, to ask me anything, so please feel free, I'm there. Thank you very much.
Wow,
Shalini?
what a wonderful talk. Yes, Almas.
Okay.
If you can stop sharing.
I am trying here, right?
Yes, okay. Wow, what a wonderful talk, Almas. On seeing some of the slides and photographs, I was getting goosebumps. I was feeling, wow, what a great achievement. And you always have not done what you have done in the laboratory. It is always out of the box. Generally being a scientist, or I interact with students also, people, those who have done whatever during their master or PhD research, or they do not want to do something else. And I've seen it for your PhD, you have work on peel and then biofuel and refinery, and then later on you have entered into so many different areas. And wow, what a great career graph, exponential career graph, and you have built it so nicely. So we have questions. Still, it is like a late time here in India, but people are watching us on YouTube. Thank you, audiences, for being here with us despite of being late. I will take some of the questions from the audiences. We have very first question. I will ask the question, and maybe one by one, all of you can give your comment. So in the last decades or so in STEM, women have increasingly taken up very high offices and even jobs that that were once executed only by men. So it is question for Professor Shobana. What do you think that this change can be sustained for the future, and what can be done from our side so that we have that sustenance for longer time? So, Professor Shobana, and then maybe Professor Dr. Anandita and Almas can also comment.
Yes. So, Shalini, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So, I think one of the major things that we must sustain is encouraging women to be less, more confident. I think this is something that the young generation is already very confident and they can do everything. In our time, there was nobody to tell us that we could do it and we should go ahead. And all kinds of, barriers that come up are actually, many of them are psychological. So you essentially need to keep it up. And one has to develop the thick skin that we shouldn't be so sensitive about who's making comments, how your work might be a little less than someone else's, and so on. It should be sciences. Research is a passion, and of course these other lines of work are equally challenging, and more women are getting into it, and there is support for it worldwide. Shalini?
Yes, Anandita?
Yeah, just adding to what Shona already said, I think it's also because more and more there is, realization for the need for, and I guess considering the times of our mothers and grandmothers, are in our generation and beyond, men are also more supportive. They are, we are breaking silos of women's roles and men's roles. Men should not cook, and men should not do household chores. These silos are being broken more and more, and everybody is sharing equally. And also, I guess this is one of the probably better outputs of nuclear families, because when we were in these joint family systems, we had grandparents taking care of kids, and men, of course, could go and do their own things and did not have to bother. But now, when you have a child and you are a couple and you have to put in some effort to look after the child, that is where I guess I think that is one advantage of being in smaller units, where you have to cooperate. From the biological point of view, you have to cooperate to succeed, and that is also kind of helping. But I think it's primarily a social mindset change which has happened.
Wonderful. Almas, any comment?
Can you repeat the question, because of the internet connection, I wasn't able to understand the last part of the question.
Yeah, so recently women in the STEM, it was once upon a time that area was only for men, but now women are, seen at higher positions, be it any, academic or non-academic job. So do you think that in future also this graph would be exponential, and how we scientists can keep that as a sustain?
Right. So the first of all, I mean, when we talk about STEM, so STEM is science, technology, engineering, and medicine. So and mathematics. So I would say that not all of these fields, we can see that much number of women, especially if we talk about mathematics, if we talk about engineering, technology. Okay, in biological sciences, in chemistry, we have lots of women, but there are many other science fields where still we don't have them. Not just on faculty level, but even on the student level as well. I would say that things definitely are changing, and definitely will change, because we women, now we are given those platforms where we can share our experiences, goods and bads, where we can share our challenges as well, where we can point out what we don't have, because of which we are not progressing. So I think there is someone who is providing that platform, and there is also someone who is listening to our voice. our voice is being heard now. This is the difference between the times of our grandmothers, mothers and grandmothers, and the time we are facing today. And I hope that one day we will not need to celebrate International Women Day.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much, Almas. We have the next question for Almas only. The question is asked by Anita, and she's asking that, despite of so many changes that has happened in the society, be it equality or inclusivity, and they are said to be key to vibrant nation and world, but still we don't see any women in the leadership role, be it MNC or be it an academic or many big, chairperson positions. We don't see women. So how can we, change that possibility? Is there any possibility to change that thing, to have more women in leadership?
I think accepting the change and accepting our own abilities is the first key, because many times, we women ourselves, and unfortunately, I mean, men are changing, they are supportive and all that, but still the term that they use is help. So even in the household things, they help in the domestic household. So the day this help is going to change, I mean, people or the men part of the family won't say that we help, and they will take it as a responsibility. I think women, they themselves, will feel less burdened, because what I feel that there are many women who would like to lead, but sometimes they said, no, we have so much, other responsibilities, especially, I mean, when they say about responsibilities, they're saying about responsibility for the family side of their kids. So, they themselves, even if they can, because there's no doubt women, they are good leaders, because, the whole of our subcontinent, if we see, is South Asia. So women, they are the ones who are leading their families. So, I mean, it depends on which kind of leadership we are saying. So they are the leaders of their families. But when we talk about, the higher ranks, the organizations, on the institute level, on the government level, on the political level, we see that women, they are so much less in leadership. And if even they are in leadership, sometimes their voice is not being heard as well. This is also something that is linked to cultural, aspects, because many times the men part, as they are in majority, they don't think that women, they can, so even if sometimes women, they go to the leadership positions, they're not heard that much. This is something this is a big challenge, and but I'm also happy seeing that there are many women that, despite of all the challenges, despite of their family responsibilities and whatsoever, they're still going ahead, trying to make some difference in the society. So, I mean, Dr. Shobana, I don't know you personally, but your presentation was really great as well. I personally know Ananditya, I personally know Shalini, and sorry, I joined late, so I couldn't hear the presentations by other speakers. But sometimes I get inspiration from you all, because it is not that easy. I mean, the way you people handle your families, your professional work, and then you guys are working with international organizations. It is, time consuming. It has lots of demands, but the way you all ladies are taking care of all that, it's absolutely wonderful. So
yeah. Thank you so much, Almas. Yeah, so nicely you have explained. Professor Shobana, you have mentioned that during your time, there was not a single woman. Wasn't it so scary? And, generally when there are no women, you feel so afraid and scared of. So from where did you get the strength as well as courage to cope up in that particular environment? This question is for you, and it is asked by Naga. Ma'am, you are muted.
Okay. So essentially, I must say that, if you have the conviction and you think you are doing well, and women do not necessarily underperform, right? Academically, we did pretty well in college. So that gives the first step that we are just as good as men. in terms of capabilities, okay? And that confidence is what matters most. They come from your family support, they come from other support. So although there was no other faculty, there were some PhD students. We were 2 girls amongst some batch of 12 or something, but at least we were 2. So, you know, so that number has increased now, and it should be much, much more easy now. But it's always, I mean, we're talking of big cities, big places, Tata Institute, Delhi University, ICT. If you go to smaller rural places, the situation is very different. The freedom and the independence women get are really very low, and you know, that makes a lot of difference. So one should be as supportive as is possible for every category of women, for that matter, every category of people. Even men in rural places get much less opportunity.
Yes, Anandita, this question is for you. So initially, you have shared in your story that you have faced a lot of challenges, hurdles, and despite of that, you were not afraid of any of such, biases that came across on your way, and you kept on moving, and you got so many big awards and clothes, and you proved this world that how they're thinking and thoughts were wrong against what you did. So what is your motivation, and what from where do you draw your strength and courage, and how you keep yourself motivating, and that too, achieving big leadership role and balancing family and career? So this question is asked by Dr. Suvarna.
I think, as I said, I have been lucky in having very supportive people around me. My motivation has always been my love for teaching and my research. And I have always had support from every member of my family, my children, my husband. And as I keep saying, and I also said in my talk, I have had a very, very good mentor, has been my pillar of support. Turn to him for advice till date. And I think, as Shobana was saying, mentorship is so important. For me, that has been my, and keeping him in front of me, I have kept on working. And the other thing is, I have always had faith in myself. That is, I think, very important, that I knew that I was doing good science. And I did not need other people to tell me whether my science was good or bad. I knew it was good. All I needed to do was keep on working, motivate my own students so that we could produce results. I just told myself and my students that you do the work, we will publish, we will show the world that we are working, and our publications will speak. We don't have to go and advocate for ourselves. And finally, that's what happened. So, time and faith in your work, confidence, with all of that, if you are working honestly, if you are giving your best, things will turn and you will get the results.
Wow. A wonderful answer. There are other questions also for Dr. Almas, like some of the audiences would like to know various fellowship opportunities or collaborative work abroad in another universities. Audiences, I would like to request all of you to visit Dr. Almas's Facebook page or Twitter page, wherein you can communicate, also on LinkedIn page, and you can contact her personally. I hope, Dr. Almas, you won't mind and helping our audiences to address their questions. So because of the time constraints, I am stopping here today, and I would like to once again thank you all the respected speakers. Despite of your busy schedule, you have gathered here, and in a real sense, sharing your stories through your experiences, you're motivating the women scientists across different country. And I think this is the in real sense real celebration of Women's Day. And I once again wish all of you a happy International Women's Day, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Shalini.
Shalini.
It was a very
Bye.
nice organization. Thank you.
Yes, the audiences
Yes.
have given a lot of thank you, very inspiring talk. They have liked Professor Shobna, Dr. Almas, Dr. Anandita's talk, very encouraging, very full of energy, full of strength. Dr. Nafisa had another session, so for her also there were 3-4 questions, but no problem. Thank you, audiences. Thank you, speakers. Thank you so much, and I look forward for your association yet on another platform, be it INSA, INIAS, or Global Young Academy. Thank you so much, and good night.
Good night.
Thank
Bye.
you very much,
Good
everyone.
night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Shruti.